I call to order the meeting of the Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee for December 11th, 2023. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, we can proceed. Seeing none, we can move on to the approval of the November 27th Transportation Committee meeting minutes. Were there any changes or additions? Seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Carter. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. And now we are on to employee recognition. I'm going to turn it to General Manager Kinderis.
Chair Barber, council members. Well, tonight's recognition is quite timely. Just last week at your committee of the whole, we were in front of you talking about Metro Transit workforce and how we are really focused on making sure we're growing and retaining employees to really deliver on the transit vision our region has. And tonight we're honoring people who have been really leading our Great Workplace Project. The Great Workplace Project is about 2 years old now, and it's an organizational culture project to really assess our organizational culture and ensure we're taking action to create a culture that is consistently high-performing, inclusive, open, caring, and equitable. So the people we're going to recognize tonight really provide testament to the fact that this is important work that can't be done in any one department or any one unit. It really takes people from across our organization and many leaders, including informal leaders, to take us forward. So tonight I'm going to first recognize Sarah Barris, who is the project manager for the Great Workplace Project. And Sarah is both going to introduce the other people we're honoring, but we're also honoring Sarah today too, because Sarah has really taken this project and truly made it real organization-wide. And I know when we embarked on this project 2 years ago, there were a lot of questions about organizational culture. Why does that matter? And Sarah has really demonstrated through her work and her leadership that bringing people together to talk very deliberately and intentionally about the norms we have for interacting with each other and how we want to lead this organization together have been so critical to our success. So with all of that, I'd like to have Sarah Barris come up, if that's okay, and she will introduce the other leaders from the Great Workplace Project we're honoring tonight.
Hello, everyone. Chair Barber, council members. Thanks for the great introduction, Leslie. She always does such a lovely job of covering other basics that then I don't have to. So I get to do this super fun stuff of talking about these great people. So like Leslie said, my name is Sarah Barris. I'm currently serving as the project manager
Something
for
went wrong.
our
Please try again.
Great Workplace Project. I will try again.
Yes. My iPad wanted to talk to you.
They're excited too about our great workplace. So as part of this project, we had recruited 118 people to contribute directly to designing our workplace norms, setting our Metro Transit all transit action items, in addition to establishing divisional work plans for all of the different divisions of Metro Transit, so that we had this really intentional tiered approach of transit, all division-wide and very personal approaches. And so all 4 of these individuals were a part of that larger group. But then as the work moved forward, one of the things that I called for was this work continues. We have a lot of on the ground, that grassroots kind of work of connecting with employees, bringing them in, really continuing to leave the door open and as many doors as possible to welcome people into this project. And so each of these individuals responded to that call. And so they've been serving in this additional capacity, particularly with our events that we've been offering throughout the year to continue engaging with employees. So this team, they are all from different parts of Metro Transit. They have their daily work, but in addition to that, they've spent about 100 hours planning, hosting, facilitating, responding to employees, we're planning for next year, doing all of that kind of work to really continue this grassroots, ground level kind of work. And so they've led the design of our monthly events, particularly focusing on increasing accessibility to employees. So they really guided the design of how we move from facility to facility, asking for feedback, offering them at different times, making sure that we're offering a variety of experiences. So the collective leadership that they're designing, it's really based on input from their own experiences and the connections that they have throughout the organization. And so they're helping right now with defining the next stage of growth for our future events and the work. We've learned a lot this year together, and so it's my privilege to really celebrate each of these individuals. And so for the very humble individuals who continue to do their work, this is their spotlight moment. I'm very honored to be able to share this. So with that, I'm going to ask you all to stand up. You don't have to say anything, but I'll just ask you to stand up. First, we have Latina Laramie. So she's a rail transportation supervisor. And if you know Latina, you know that she is an incredible leader who really speaks openly and honestly. She is constantly connecting with employees, asking about their experiences and looking for feedback, and really looking at kind of investing in her own personal growth so that she can turn right around and serve others. So Latina Laramie. Next, we have Christopher Darsow. So he is a warranty supervisor, excuse me, over at Overhaul Base. And I will just say that when I first met Christopher, he told me that he was an extreme introvert who never would ever speak in front of spaces, and now he's out tabling and speaking and up here, and just the incredible growth and leadership that he demonstrates with such an authentic style. It's just he's the kind of person that you can just very easily connect to, and just such an incredible member of the team. And this morning ran around delivering stuff so that we could get our great workplace items out. So thank you, Christopher. Next, we have Camille Mitchell. She's an assistant transportation manager over here at North Loop. And Camille is somebody who very quiet, but also has these incredible relationships with people across the organization. Every single facility we go to, she knows almost everybody or just the obscure person, and she calls them out and draws them in. And again, this relationship building is just so powerful to how we continue this movement of really shifting our workplace culture. And last but certainly not least, we have Jur Yang. So just a fun fact, Jur and I started on the exact same day. So we were at our orientation table together, and we went our separate ways. And then Great Workplace came up and she signed up, and it was so fun to just reconnect and have this person who started on the same day as me. She's a principal administrative specialist with our Blue Line Project office, and I know everybody there loves her. She is the do-it-all person if you need something done. She has the best energy. She's creating great workplace culture within that project team itself, but then has done tons of additional administrative work to help us really level up the work that we're doing through our own events with Great Workplace Projects. So thank you, Jer, for everything that you do. So with that, I just want to celebrate all of them. Thank you for allowing us this time. Thank you for accepting this nomination. It's my privilege to get to work with them and to be able to celebrate them in such a special way. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And we really appreciate all the work you do.
Me too.
Thank you. Can you hand out some love awards? Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do. So nice to see you. And last but not least, Sarah.
Oh, you got it.
There you go, and thank you again. I'm really glad you got a chance to come here and share a little bit about what you do, because we know how important it is to retain our workforce, and to have something like this taking place and how you can do it well is really important. So thank you so much. All right, now we can go on to our next order of business, and the first is reports, and we turn to MTS Executive Director Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, council members. Two updates for you tonight. Regional solicitation applications are due this Friday, December 15th at 4 p.m. The council approved the solicitation back in September, and so the end of the application process is quickly approaching. Application review and scoring would then begin with an anticipated slate of projects for nearly $250 million across 13 categories to be identified by the TAAC next July and then brought forward to the council for consideration late in the summer. Separately, the general manager and I tomorrow will present at the state capitol to the Legislative Task Force on Aging. This is a task force that was established to review and develop state resources for an aging demographic, to identify and prioritize support for an aging population, and to ensure aging-related state policies are inclusive. And so we'll share some information regarding older adult demographics in the region, as well as how older adults' travel patterns are similar or different from other groups. So just as a quick overview, adults age 65 plus currently comprise about 14% of the region's residents, with expectation that will grow to a forecasted 22% by 2050. However, in 51 cities and townships, this age group already is more than 20% of the population, and these cities and townships are really scattered around the region. From a transportation standpoint, older adults make similar numbers of trips to younger age groups. There's not a significant drop-off in travel until after age 85, and among older adults who ride transit, they actually ride at similar rates to other age groups. Their trip purposes tend to differ. There's a greater share of errands and shopping and medical, not as many school trips as you might expect, and a decreased share of commuting, but commute trips among people age 65 plus continue to represent about 1 out of every 6 trips, so not significantly different than younger age groups. So we'll be sharing those as well as some of our services at the council with the task force tomorrow. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Any questions or comments? I'm interested to hear. I'm going to have to listen. I'm curious. So thank you. Now we'll turn to Metro Transit General Manager Canderas for her report.
Chair Barber, council members, just a brief update. As you're aware, we started having community service officers inspecting fares and issuing administrative citations. That kicked off last week, Monday. And Monday through Thursday of last week, they had conducted just shy of 1,700 inspections and issued just under 170 citations. So, so far, that program's going well, and we'll learn quite a bit from that as we look to continue expanding administrative citations and the Transit Rider Investment Program moving forward. And I'll also mention, in addition to the legislative hearing that Charles mentioned, there will also be a House Transportation hearing tomorrow on transit public safety. And this will be an opportunity for Chair Zelli, Chief Morales, and me to provide that committee with an update on where we stand implementing several provisions in the Transportation Omnibus that related to transit public safety. So that will occur tomorrow, and I'm sure there's probably ways to tune in or watch the video if you're interested. So with that, Chair Barber, I take any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Pacheco.
Chair, what is the tipping point to when you actually get a citation?
Chair Barber, Councilmember Pacheco, if you are not compliant with fare policy, you will be issued an administrative citation. So you need to have a valid fare on you when you're checked.
But if there were 17 or what was the 1,700 or what was?
They, Chair Barber, Councilmember Pacheco, so the community service officers did inspections. So they, do their inspection of everyone on a vehicle, and they conducted 1,700 of those, a little shy of that, not quite 1,700. And of those, they found about 170 people who had not paid or did not have a valid fare on them, and so they issued a citation.
Is that, what do you think of that number? Is that a good number, bad number? I mean, what does that tell you?
Well, I think it certainly shows us we have room for improvement for fare compliance, and that's really early data. That's Monday through Thursday of last week, so certainly we'll continue to track what happens moving forward.
Councilmember Carter.
Thank you to Councilmember Pacheco for asking that question. I would also just like to extend the question, what are our expectations based on what we know from other areas of the country who are fare checking? Should it be 2% of the people that we check do not have fair validation, or what? What are others experiencing once the program is in place? And I know there are other areas that are doing the fair checking, right?
Yeah, Chair Barber, Councilmember Carter, we don't have right now established a target or an expectation, but it's a really good question. What are other agencies experiencing in terms of fair compliance? And definitely something we can look into to get a sense of where we stand related to that. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Additional questions or comments?
Just,
Councilmember Pacheco?
just to me, it just seemed like a low number. Now, I ride the train quite a bit, or the bus, and so it seemed to me that, and I would say this one time, because I think I said it, of all the years I've been riding the train from downtown to wherever, I'd say it's at least 9 years, something like that. I have never once been asked for my ticket. And maybe because half the time I have a suit on, I don't know. But not just, so that, to me, that was kind of a low number, but I was just wondering what the tipping point was and how we compare would be great to know.
And I will just say sort of anecdotally from what I've seen from social media posts, a lot of the CSOs would let people know when they were getting on the train that they were going to be checking. And so there was an opportunity to go get a ticket if you hadn't. So, which, some of the differences in the numbers might be that. But I think just having a presence out there and people understanding that this is our expectation going forward, I do think we'll need to have, this is what we expect when as an acceptable level or a level that we are feeling that we can support. But I think just, having the process in place and messaging it would be very good. So, additional questions or comments? Great, thank you. And we don't have a TAAC report tonight, so we can move to the consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the item on consent.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Councilmember Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. We're on to our first non-consent item, which is business item 2023-279. It's MTS small bus procurement, and we have Paul Colton here. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. For this first item, the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute contract 23P-238 with North Central Bus Sales for up to 16 expansion buses not to exceed an amount of $2,500,000, and contract 23P-239 with Hoagland Bus for up to 28 replacement buses in an amount not to exceed $4,400,000 for a total procurement value not to exceed $6,900,000. The 28 replacement buses are our Transit Link fleet, and both of these projects are in the CIP. They were brought in the third quarter amendment previously. The first contract with North Central Bus is fully funded by Regional Transit Capital, so there's no federal funds that will be in that contract. The second contract for the 28 Transit Link buses with Hoagland does have federal funding in it, and so that will have all of the federal requirements for purchasing in that contract. At this point, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have for this purchase.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute contract 23P-238 with North Central Bus Sales for up to 16 expansion buses not to exceed $2.5 million, and contract 23P-239 with Hoagland Bus for up to 28 replacement buses in an amount not to exceed $4.4 million for a total procurement value not to exceed $6.9 million. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the business item.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales and seconded by Councilmember Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And I will turn it back to Paul for business item 2023-286.
Thank you, Chair Barber. Our second item is also a bus purchase, but it's slightly different than how we have normally handled this in the past. Typically, like the previous approval that you just completed, that's through the state of Minnesota's cooperative procurement. We are using a national procurement on this purchase, a Sourcewell. What we're trying to do is find other vendors to create more competition. And so we found an avenue to be able to do that at a competitive price, also through North Central Bus. So this authorizes a regional administrator to execute contract 23P237 with North Central Bus for 25 replacement buses for $3.75 million. We've worked closely with North Central on this. Our procurement department is pretty excited that we're using a Sourcewell contract. And this is also using regional transit capital funding for its replacement, so there are no federal funds in this purchase either. And I would be glad to answer any questions on this project.
Thank you, Paul. Questions or comments from council members? I'll just say I'm really glad to see this and to see that there's some alternatives. As you know, we've had some struggles with filling our small bus fleet, so because there's been sort of single source where we had to go. So this is really, really good news. I'm glad we're doing this. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I thought I heard you say that although you're executing this through Sourcewell, you're purchasing from the same source. Is that correct? From the same vendor?
Sure.
And that leads me to ask the question, why didn't we do the first one through Sourcewell as well?
Chair Barber, Councilmember Carter. So North Central Bus is one of our regional sales vendors. They are the licensed vendor for a number of different lines of vehicles. And so this particular purchase just fell into this group of buses that we lined up with them as we began to negotiate last spring in exploring this. And so we just targeted in our plan these 25 buses for that purchase. The 16 buses were part of a later on in our development plan for capital replacement. And so it's more of an identification of when fleet was being replaced as we explored that option.
Okay, and thank you very much. I'm glad to see it through Sourcewell as well.
Additional questions or comments? Great, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for business item 2023-286, same week.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Councilmember Chambliss, seconded by Councilmember Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Now we're on to business item 2023-287, which is a joint powers agreement with the City of St. Paul and St. Paul Housing and Redevelopment Authority. And we have Michael Krantz here to present. Hi.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, Council members. I'm Michael Krantz. I'm the Senior Manager of Transit-Oriented Development for Metro Transit. And I have a business item to amend a joint powers agreement between the Council, the City of St. Paul, and the St. Paul HRA with respect to Central Station Block. So this is Central Station Block. In green is Central Station. The Council owns the area on this block, excuse me, shown in blue and green, and the St. Paul HRA owns the parcel shown in brown. We do have station easements over a portion of that parcel owned by the St. Paul HRA, and this also shows the Skyway and how it navigates that site. And really the intent of the joint powers agreement is to support the joint redevelopment, the collaborative redevelopment of this site. So specifically, the joint powers agreement governs how the council and the city work together to resolve issues on the site, procure a developer, select a developer, and ultimately negotiate development-related agreements on this site. This specific action proposes to authorize a regional administrator to execute a First Amendment to the joint powers agreement, which would omit references to a statutory right of first refusal in the agreement, and then also allow the regional administrator to execute any subsequent non-material amendments to that agreement as well. Just briefly, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what some of the next steps are for this project. So we've made quite a bit of progress since the last time we presented on this site. We actually just posted a request for letters of interest for this site on Friday. So the intent of that is really to try to understand what sort of development interest there is in Central Station Block and help inform what will be a later request for proposals. In tandem with that, we're going to be marking this site to make sure that anybody who might be interested in advancing a project here is aware of the opportunity. The plan is to release a request for developer proposals in early 2024, and then ultimately select a developer based on that process in mid-2024. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Any questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Chambliss?
Thank you. So, is the redevelopment area adjacent to the St. Paul Athletic Club, or where is that in the space?
Chair and council members, I'll just go back to this map. So the St. Paul Athletic Center is at the bottom of this map. So the only area that isn't really colored in this is the St. Paul Athletic Facility. There's actually an RFP for that site as well, or a marketing package.
Councilmember Chambliss?
Thank you. Can you speak to what type of changes specifically that we want to make to that property with the joint agreement?
Sure. So the goal of the RFI is to start getting a sense of what sort of projects the developer might propose on this site, and then ultimately through the request for proposals to select a developer based on a program of development. We're opening up that entire area that's shaded in blue, green, and brown for that redevelopment site. So that would potentially allow development beside the central station, but also above it in the air rights.
Councilmember Chambliss?
Okay, so right now there's a skyway area that could be impacted.
Yeah.
So that could go away depending upon the RFP, or do we have a plan for that?
Chair and council member, the goal would ultimately be to incorporate, or the opportunity here, I guess I would say, is to incorporate some of those facilities into a private development. The intent would be to maintain the function of the Skyway and the public facilities that are currently there today. So like many of the Skyways throughout the city of St. Paul, they're incorporated into private developments. That could be an outcome for this site as well.
Okay, so I'm looking at the section on the redevelopment requirements to the tentative developer, and I'm assuming that tentative means it's like a placeholder for who would be selected through the RFP. It doesn't mean that there's somebody asking or inquiring.
Chair, Councilmember, I want to make sure I know which documents. Are you referring to the business item? Or?
I'm looking at the business item, and it's under number 10, under other agreements.
Oh, are you in the joint powers agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there has not been any tentative developers selected, but ultimately that's who would be identified through the request for proposals process.
Okay, and
Yeah.
my question related to that is, they would be responsible for operation maintenance costs, as well as the public art pieces. I'm just trying to understand why we have the joint agreement in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So what is what's the trigger for redevelopment?
Yeah, Chair and council members. So the joint powers agreement, the intent behind that is that so the city of St. Paul owns a portion of this site and the council owns the remainder of that site. So this allows us to jointly solicit rather than doing two separate developer solicitations. The joint powers agreement allows us to do those pieces together. The next step where we identify a developer would happen as part of the request for proposals. So that's what the process that would begin in early 2024 and then continue through mid-2024. I hope I'm understanding that question correctly.
maybe I can further clarify. There's a reason why we're entering in the agreement and why we're targeting this particular location for redevelopment. I'm just wondering, is there a goal in mind? You know, why have we put this project forward for RFP and going into the, I mean, it's obvious that it's jointly owned, but, you know, what are the potential benefits of putting this redevelopment forward?
Chair and council member, I guess there are a few pieces. I think that there's a shared goal here between the TOD policy that the council has in the city of St. Paul, their interest in having more redevelopment on this site, because today it's a vacant site. And I think the broader goal is to support that redevelopment that encourages partially more transit ridership revenue for this city, as well as a variety of other goals at this site. So that, I think that's the broader goal if I'm getting at the broader intent of the questions.
You are,
All
thank you
right.
so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, additional questions or comments? Councilmember Carter?
Thank you. I know that we have been looking forward to seeing this site redeveloped in the city of St. Paul and Ramsey County for some time, and I'm glad to see this moving forward. However, I am motivated to ask a question about the process. I know that I am newer at the council, and so do not have as much information about the process for developing the RFI and releasing the RFI. I would further ask about the process after the responses come in and prior to a release of an RFP, wanting in essence to know that the council, the Transportation Committee and the council will be involved to hear and to guide from a governance perspective.
Sure.
As those steps move forward. Can you tell me more about what has been done, what has been brought before the Transportation Committee and the council, and how we will see that as it continues in the next coming months?
Sure. So the next steps, as I outlined, right now we're in the middle of the request for letters of interest. The next step that we would move into is the request for developer proposals. That'll be about a 5-month process that we expect to wrap up mid-2024. And at that point, we would work with the city of St. Paul through the joint powers agreement that's been executed to select a developer, and then that would come before council to approve the developer selection. But that wouldn't be the final action that would be taken on this site, because once a developer's been selected, there's quite a bit of process that goes into negotiating development-related agreements for this site. So there would be a site development agreement, which would potentially wrap in a purchase agreement, an operations and maintenance agreement that really outlines how this private development and the transit will work together, and then potentially a cooperative construction agreement, all of which will kind of explain, well, one, how things are being built, how they're operating, and then how they physically relate to each other. And all of those agreements would obviously come back to council for approval.
All right, Councilmember Carter?
Thank you. I am very interested in understanding how early in the process the council, the Transportation Committee, and the council interact as we receive the responses from the RFI and look forward to then developing the characteristics of the RFP. I would like to know that the council has an opportunity to understand what's come forward and how, and to have some impact on how we move forward toward the RFP even. Can you share more with me about that process?
Chair and council member. So I guess an important characteristic of the request for letters of interest is that we're not going to limit who can apply to the RFP based on those letters of interest. This is just a step that we're going to, one, to just make sure that the development community is aware of the opportunity, but we're not going to limit who can submit proposals through the RFP as a result of any responses to the RFI. So we're not going to be limiting that, but there will be an opportunity for us to share information on who's coming back with information on those projects potentially.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And this likely is for a governance discussion regarding how large projects such as this do move forward and what interaction Transportation Committee and Council have.
And Thank you, Councilmember, and it's something we can definitely talk about. There are different, with especially RFPs, there's different constraints sometimes about what are roles at certain points in time. So I think it's want to talk to some of our people to figure out how best we do that, whether it's even in something in a workshop, to even just understand the process of, because we get so many big projects, and especially at this committee, and figure out kind of, so we know throughout what our roles and responsibilities are.
I appreciate
And
it.
we can arrange something.
Thank you.
All right, additional questions or comments? I just was curious, so council, our TOD office, we're the, like, the marketing of this right now? We're the ones taking that role, that lead?
Yeah, Chair, we're working very closely with the city of St. Paul throughout this entire process. We've been meeting with them every other week to shape the request for letters of interest, to work on the marketing documents, to make sure that we have a comprehensive list of developers. But we are leading that process, and it is going through the council's procurement process. It's posted on our procurement website, and we'll, as the joint powers agreement outlines, they'll be part of selecting a developer in each of those steps. But yes, we are
thank you.
leading that.
All right, additional questions or comments? All right, seeing and hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve business item 2023-287.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, we're on to our fourth business item, which is business item 2023-288, also same week, and it is the West construction package for the B-Line. We have Alicia Valenti here.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. My name is Alicia Valenti, and I'm a senior project coordinator in the Arterial Bus Rapid Transit Department. You can call me Alicia, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm here today to discuss the award of a construction contract for the Metro B-Line West package. The Metro B-Line Arterial BRT West package involves construction of 15 bus rapid transit platforms at 8 intersections along the portion of the B-Line corridor between France and Hiawatha Avenues in Minneapolis. This is the second and final major piece of B-Line construction following the B-Line East package in 2023. The project will also construct an optical restroom and temporary customer boarding accommodation at the Lake and France layover, fiber communication infrastructure, and locally requested pedestrian, bicycle, signal, and pavement improvements along the corridor developed in coordination with Hennepin County and the City of Minneapolis. Ahead of the formal solicitation process, there was significant contractor outreach on this solicitation in partnership with Procurement. Prior to the invitation for bids, project staff hosted an informational session, and B-Line West was included on Procurement's public-facing contracting opportunities forecast. The invitation for bids was advertised on October 10th, 2023, and council staff hosted a pre-bid meeting on October 24th. We saw significant interest from contractors. There were 47 plan holders, including 7 prime bidders, 22 subcontractors, and 9 suppliers. 9 identified as women, minority, veteran, or disadvantaged business enterprises, and 4 bids were received. Thomas & Sons Construction, Inc. was the low, responsive, and responsible bidder and is recommended for award. The Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity assigned a disadvantaged business enterprise goal of 13% for this solicitation. OEEO determined that Thomas & Sons Construction, Inc. has met the DBE requirements of this contract. Thomas & Sons has committed to a 15.4% DBE participation for the contract. Just over $11 million of funding for the contract is in the Authorized Capital Program in Project 62802. The remainder of the contract value is funded by a cooperative agreement with Hennepin County for locally requested scope. A same week, council action is requested to ensure timely contract award and construction start. As you recall, construction is scheduled to begin as soon as the snow melts in spring 2024. Major construction is scheduled to be completed in 2024, and service will begin in June 2025. To summarize, business item 2023-288 requests that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to award and execute contract 23P079 with Thomas & Sons Construction, Inc. for construction of the Metro B-Line West construction package in an amount not to exceed $32,787,228. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from council members? Seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2023-288, same week.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Cameron. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're on to business item 2023-297, also a same week item, the Blue Line Enhancements Phase 2B construction. And we have Michael Benek here.
Madam Chair and committee members, hello. I'm Michael Winneck. I'm a Principal Project Coordinator in Engineering and Facilities, specifically for the Rail Engineering subgroup. And I'm here to present the Line Enhancements Phase 2B Construction SCADA Programming Contract. All right, let's see. So the Blue Line Enhancements Project, Phase 2B project, is from roughly Bloomington Central Station to Terminal 2. It's going to replace and upgrade our rail signal system, install bidirectional signaling, and replace the obsolete signal system that we can no longer get parts for. We're also going to be replacing deteriorated switches at either NWA or JPH interlocking. Previously named NWA is being renamed to JPH. And then finally, we're going to be replacing corroded rail in several grade crossings within those project limits. All right. Here's a map of our project with some call outs to the major work. Essentially, it's installing, like I said, installing signal, replacing the existing signal system, installing bits of new signal system, replacing rail, so on and so forth. This contract is specifically for the SCADA, the programming of the light rail SCADA system. SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. This is what allows our rail control center to dispatch trains, access camera feeds, messaging systems, and access and control various other subsystems. That picture up there is a quick snapshot from our existing SCADA system within the project limits. Just kind of a rough example of showing how it pretty much connects everything from the stations to the signal system, so on and so forth. Because the BLUP 2B project is fully replacing the rail signal system, it requires reprogramming of the SCADA system to integrate this new hardware. So this contract, contract 23M005D, this is a work order contract associated with Wabtec Master Contract 23M005, which provides engineering, design, programming, testing, and integration services related to Metro Transit and North Star SCADA systems. The contract has no value, but it allows the council to write work orders against it, requires signatory approval for each work order. The specific SCADA system we use is the AIMRail SCADA system. It's a proprietary system. And due to that, the proprietary nature of the programming, only Wabtec is allowed to make programming and graphics modifications to the system. Work that is performed by Wabtec under the master contract is assigned a unique work order number and a corresponding alphabet letter for its statement of work and budget per the job requested. The business item specifically authorizes 23M005D, work order number 4, to make modifications to the AIMRail SCADA system required by the BLUP 2B project. This work was approved as a sole source procurement on February 14th, 2023. Because it is a sole source agreement, it does not have a DBE goal. I think that's all I have.
Very good, thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. This is quite technical, so I'm hoping that I understand the hardware pieces that have to be replaced. There's switches in the rail system, and the corroded rail and the grade crossings.
Yeah.
That's not system related, right? The corroded rail, is that the railroad ties or what is that?
Madam Chair and committee member, that is the actual rail that the trains run on is corroded within the grade crossings.
Okay.
That is not part of this contract. It's part of the overall Blue Line Enhancements Phase 2B project that this contract will support. That contract was approved by the committee. That was business item 2023-202. Was approved September 11th of 2023.
Okay, so this is all systems then?
Correct, yes.
And that's almost 809,000. that's a big number.
Yep.
I'm curious, are there other parts of our rail system that we're forecasting that are gonna need similar replacements?
Yes.
Okay. And probably at a similar cost and probably the same single source provider. My question, I have another question about why we have the single source provider, or why that it's proprietary in nature, because that kind of locks it down to a single source if it's proprietary, and then no one else can touch it except for them, if I heard you correctly. It seems to me that that might limit us as far as the opportunity for folks that can work on it, and potentially, you know, there's no competition, so the price is the price, you know, outside of what we negotiate. So I'm just curious about why we have this proprietary agreement.
Madam Chair, committee member, I don't think you'll find a SCADA system that isn't proprietary. We're locked in no matter what we do. And we don't want to be switching SCADA, since this powers not just the blue line, but also the green line, as well as North Star. We don't, I mean, if you want to take responsibility for shutting down the lines every time we want to change vendors on a SCADA system, I will happily put your name down for that. But I'm guessing no one wants that, including our riders. So
I wouldn't be qualified.
yeah. So consequently, these sole sources, which are not uncommon, especially you'll see this also for our signal system components, for maintenance agreements, et cetera. We do the sole sources because they, I guess, overall limit disruption to the system. I mean, I guess everyone would prefer not sole sources, but unfortunately, that's just the reality of, I guess, the practical realities of running a system sometimes. So.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
All right, additional questions or comments? All right, seeing none, and then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2023-297. Same week.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Morales. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Carter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, now we're on to business item 2023-302, also a same week item. I'm going to turn it first to General Manager Kinderis to make a few comments while our presenters come up. And we'll have Lieutenant Jason Linder and Leah Palmer. But go ahead.
Chair Barber, council members. So before Lieutenant Linder and Leah present, I just wanted to share a little context behind this item. This relates to our ongoing work to implement the Transit Rider Investment Program, or TRIP. As you're aware, that was a component of the Transportation Omnibus that was passed by the legislature and signed by the governor earlier this year. TRIP has two pieces to it. One is this establishment of administrative citations, and we've kicked that off with having CSOs start to inspect fares, issue citations, as we talked about earlier. The other component of this is creating TRIP personnel, or TRIP agents, who would have that responsibility of inspecting fares and issuing citations, but would also have additional training and expectations to assist our customers, help connect people to services, help with some wayfinding questions, and so forth. So you might recall back on October 11th, the council acted to establish this TRIP program. And as part of that conversation, we really heard council members express to us the importance of acting with urgency. So the step we're bringing before you tonight would help us continue to act with urgency and really respond to what we're hearing both from customers and employees in terms of their desire to see additional presence on the system. So this business item would amend our existing contract with Allied Universal, which is providing supplemental security services for us, and would allow us to also have them provide TRIP agent services as well. And I know Lieutenant Linder will explain the details, but happy to answer any questions as conversation goes forward. So thank you.
Very good. Turn it over to you guys.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Jason Linder with the Police Department and Leah Palmer. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize a regional administrator to execute an amendment to contract 22P123 with Allied Universal for additional security services and to include new personnel that the council hereby authorize under this contract to perform the duties required under Minnesota Statute 473.4075, the Transit Rider Investment Program, or TRIP, and that total value of this contract not exceed $11 million. I'm happy to try to unpack that with either kind of the background of how we got here, starting with the initial contract, kind of the give you an update on how things are going with that, or we can break right into the TRIP program, whatever you guys prefer.
Councilman?
So
Councilmember Cameron?
I think one of the first actions that we took as a new council was on this Allied Universal contract. So I would be interested in hearing updates on the initial portion of the contract. I don't think we've checked back in on that to hear how it has gone over the past couple of months.
Perfect. So the initial contract was signed April 2023 for a one-year term to carry us through April 2024. That initial contract was for a total of not to exceed $6 million over the two-year term, so 1 year with the option to extend one more year. The Allied staff was in place at Lake Street Midtown and Franklin stations on May 31st. And since that launch of the tail end of May, we're at Lake Street Midtown, Franklin. We're now 35W Lake Street, Chicago Lake Transit Center, Brooklyn Center Transit Center, and the Uptown Transit Center, as well as they have a 24-hour one-body supervisor, rover, to help kind of augment and check on their staff. Obviously, there's been some increase in costs as we continue to scale the program up, from obviously starting with 2 locations to get to 6, and then seeing where we've had to maybe increase some bodies from the initial rollout. But I would be happy to report at this point, I'm still waiting for final invoices for October, November, but in general, 6 months of work, we're only at about $1 million right now of the kind of estimated $3 million for first year. So halfway through, we're at about $1 million. The calls for service, the dispatch calls for service at those locations, I will tell you, has seen a significant decrease. This data is a little bit dated. This only goes through mid-October. But I would tell you that Lake Street, Midtown again, and Franklin, which launched the very end of May, so basically all of June. The kind of a little bit on the front end, March calls for service 674, April was 289, May was 232. Again, they launch in June. June was down to 137, July was 81, August was 70, and September was 70. These are dispatch calls for service. So significant decrease. Franklin saw real positive impact there as well. April 133, May 122. In June, when they launched, 100. July was 98. August was 66, and September was down to 51. Kind of early August, we launched 35W in Brooklyn Center Transit Center, 35W in Lake Street. April calls 124. May was 124, June 113, July 73. In August, they're there for 3 weeks. We dropped down to 27, and in September, we dropped down to 9 calls for service at 35W Lake Street. That was a spot that we had not initially, we knew about, but was not kind of in the initial rollout of the program. But we knew we had a problem there, and we had to address that sooner than later based on those the high numbers there. Again, April and May were 124, so significant numbers. Brooklyn Center Transit Center, again, the calls are a little misleading up there. The numbers are about the same, but a lot of the calls, when you kind of dig down a little bit deeper into that, a lot of those are maybe people sleeping on a bus, and that the call is initiated at Brooklyn Center, but it's terminating down here at Haywood, and we have officers and removing people that are, been sleeping for, multiple trips or something like that as the bus is going out of service. So those numbers are a little skewed up there. They haven't come down to what we'd like to see. But again, some of that, when you dig inside those numbers, that's the rationale for why Brooklyn Center numbers are looking the way they are. And Uptown, too early to give any data on that. They just started Monday through Friday there. Late November, and a second body just began there as well. So we'll have more data as we move forward, but that's kind of that's the gist of how things have been going for the last 6 full months. of data on that. Any other questions on that?
Councilmember Cameron.
So you actually read my mind, and Chief Morales had presented on the Brooklyn Center Transit Station. Could you dig a little deeper into the explanation for that? Because I want to make sure that, you know, our suburban transit stations exist a little bit differently than our urban transit stations, and I want to make sure that this Allied Universal model, this security as opposed to MTPD model works in suburban locations as well. So can you talk a little bit more about that, what you're seeing, and how you're using security officers at that Brooklyn Center?
Sure, and Chair Barber and council members. So right now, Brooklyn Center, when we first went into this thing, we weren't sure obviously how much this whole program was going to cost. We went into it thinking, well, if we could put 2 people at every location that we have across the metro, basically from 5 in the morning to 1 in the morning, we'd have a big impact. That's way too much money. So we have to kind of look at the crime data and try to make deployments based on that. So what we currently have Brooklyn Center staffed with right now is 2 officers from 12 o'clock until 8 p.m. And the center itself is open from 7 in the morning till 7 p.m. I'd have to have our crime analysts kind of unpack the numbers, do a real deep dive into all that stuff. But what we're going to end up looking at, I can tell you as we move forward here, when we kind of dig into the numbers a little bit better, if we have to expand hours of coverage from security standpoint, from just the 2 people from noon to 8, or try something different. We certainly have officers that make their way up there, either if they're called or dispatched, or just in the area and checking on the facility. But yeah, we'll have to look at that and just see what's going on, and if we need to expand coverage or try something different there.
You good? Do you have a follow-up?
I'm good for now.
Okay.
I'll leave it there.
Councilmember Morales.
And just to comment on what you're asking in regards to Brooklyn Park, there used to be a really large supermarket in that area that chose to close down due to the extremely high theft in that area. So it's not all related or tied to the transit center. It's that area in general is a very high crime area. So it tends to just flow into our transit center, which is why you won't see a huge decrease in calls coming in from that area. I frequent that area a lot, and anyone that knows that area, it's not the transit center, it's just the area you're in. It's a horrible answer, but.
So,
Councilmember Chambliss.
I heard you say that the center closed at 8 p.m. Does the service close, or is that the staff at the center?
Yeah, the transit center is open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We've got security there right now from noon to 8. But bus service, and correct me if I'm wrong, somebody that knows, we're probably running bus service till probably 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock or something like that. I guess I don't know what the hours are. But yeah, we're not staffing. We're not staffing every hour of service up there.
Okay. Additional questions or comments? All right.
Okay. So the TRIP program and why the ask is for the extra money to try to round this program out. Our initial estimates in speaking with the contractor would put a kind of a reasonably impactful program between 2.6 million and probably a little north of 3 million, depending on how this program gets scaled. And that would carry us through the extension of the contract, which would be the 1 more year extension through April 2025. Kind of digging into what that money would get us is we're looking at a dedicated account manager, which is the same setup that they have on the security side of the house. So the TRIP program would have a dedicated account manager. They would also have dedicated supervisors, kind of AM and PM. Again, it depends on how LEA and TRIP actually roll out, but for sake of argument, we were looking at 2 different shifts, kind of a morning and afternoon, and basically put 3 teams of 2 people on the blue line and 3 teams of 2 people on the green line do that morning and afternoon, and cover basically 16 hours of kind of a 6 to 2 and a 2 to 10, and cover things that way with about 24 trip agents, along with supervisors and an account manager. Again, this could be scaled up depending on what the program sees. Scale it up, scale it down, pull back a little bit on the weekends, move it up Monday through Friday. Again, if the program is successful, and depending on the total head count, whether it's 24, you make it bigger up to 30 or 40, whatever it becomes, staying within a budget, obviously. Some of those trip agents could get rolled over to the BRT lines, or the initial 24 could just stay put on the blue line. You could pull them off to BRT, unless, like I said, you scale the program up and push people over to both sides. There would be probably an increased cost depending on the number of bodies per day that we try to bring in, as far as a supervisor standpoint. Things we might have to look at as well is maybe a different space for everybody to report to, different extra costs with the program, with the legislator saying that the Narcan would be a component of the program. So there will be some other costs that come out that are not just human based, but other things with the program. All the kind of the fine tuning of the details would fall to Leah Palmer and the rest of the TRIP people, and I would just, if there's anything else that I'm missing or that you want to add, throw it out there.
Wait, excuse me, I'll wait for any questions rather than random.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. So you were talking about the Narcan support. I know this business item is specific to the TRIP program, but as Councilmember Morales said, it's a little bit bigger than just our buses, our trains, our stations. So are we getting support and funding, or how are we collaborating with other municipalities around the corridor areas? Because all the responsibility obviously can't fall on Metro Transit to solve social issues. So can you speak to that a little bit?
So I'm going to pause. We'll turn it to General Manager Canderas first.
Chair Barber, Councilmember Chambliss, really appreciate that question. And actually, it's been through our supplemental security work that through our community affairs department, we've really this year been convening partners, particularly around areas where we're deploying supplemental security, to have those conversations about how do we really kind of get more upstream on some of these issues, because we have seen from supplemental security, we can successfully move people around, but we're not getting at the root cause of a lot of these problems. And so that's why we have used this program as an opportunity to really start conversation. I would also add, in addition to the TRIP, we have the Transit Service Intervention Project that's underway now as well. And that's, you're familiar with that piece from passing the 10 different contracts that have been awarded through that program. But those vendors are really focused on providing social service outreach, more connections to service. So I think this in many ways complements that. And I know our police department's been working closely with Selena Martina, who's coordinating the Transit Service Intervention Project. So we know who's out where, and we can help connect people, who may be in need or might be interested in some sort of connection referral. So I think those are some elements of how this will fit into kind of a broader array of work we're trying to do.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's very helpful. I know that this is something that has come up at the Transportation Committee for at least 5 years, and we're just now starting to kind of dig in and get the funding. So we're very appreciative of having the funding to be able to do these types of programs. We've been thinking about it for a long time, but I'd like to see, as we start these conversations with our partners, how are they contributing as well, financially and in other ways?
Councilmember Carter, in the camera.
Actually, part of the question that I was going to ask was answered. Thank you to Director Canderas for that.
I want to share that in the process of onboarding here at the Metropolitan Council, and specifically with our chief, our police chief, I've been pleased to see the interconnected work that he has been doing with other jurisdictions, the contracts, the collaborative contracts that he's working on and continuing to bring before us, indicate the extent to which he and our staff are going to make certain that we're blending this work around transit, knowing that we have stepped deeper into this space of solving social problems, also knowing that we have a role in that, but that we cannot possibly do it alone. So trying to align the work of our jurisdictions together with Metro Transit and Metro Council, I might say, makes so much sense. And understanding the joint investment we're all making, knowing, of course, that others have been more deeply involved in the social concerns area, but that we can't close our doors to that either. I just want to express some real pleasure in knowing, I don't know if pleasure is the right word, but joy in knowing that we are working more and more together. And I know there are certain jurisdictions with which we're working better than with others, but it's a process. So thank you to Council Member Chambliss for mentioning that. And I just want to take my time, instead of asking the question, which is about the parsing out of these different responsibilities between TRIP and TCEP and our partners, et cetera, acknowledging that's all a work in process and that we want to continue to receive information about the deepening work. Also happy to see that we do see a way of acting with urgency and getting to that space where we have more people on our transportation systems, helping, checking, issuing citations. But overall, this really is about the customer experience and improving that customer experience for all of us. So thank you for bringing this before us today.
Thank you. Councilmember Cameron.
So, we do have a lot of different programs dedicated towards tackling this issue. And so this might be more of a question for GM Canderas. And how are you coordinating all of these resources? Some of them, are council initiated, some of them are legislatively mandated, but how are we using the limited amount of resources we have to tackle this larger societal problem in a way where we're not throwing all the paint against the wall and being redundant, but really being strategic about where and how we're using those resources?
Yeah. Chair Barber, Councilmember Cameron, appreciate that question because it's something we want to make sure we're doing, that we're being strategic and not just acting without a plan or without a coordination or without coordination in mind. Honestly, I would step back over a year to when we developed the Safety and Security Action Plan. And that was really our attempt to get in one place all the different work that's underway across Metro Transit that allows us to create a safer, more secure system. And so all of these elements we're talking about tonight have been integrated into that plan, in part to make sure all of us who are touching different pieces of that are talking to each other. And I'll admit, some of this is very much we are trying to balance that coordination with the urgency of continuing to move forward. But in general, we've been talking about some variation of this TRIP program for about 5 years or so now, depending on kind of when you start the clock. So this concept is not new. It's our ability to advance it because of the legislation this year. That's really the new development. So that's a long way of saying I think it's very much still a work in process as we learn how this is going. And that's why it's a really important milestone that we have our CSOs out there doing fare inspection. That's the first time we've had non-sworn fare inspection. And so that's another area of learning. But I think I would say overall it's, through that, the structure of our action plan and kind of the coordination mechanisms we have within Metro Transit is how we make sure we're having those conversations, that we're not duplicating, but we're really acting with synergy across the areas.
All right, additional questions or comments? All right, I have a couple. So one question I have, so when we talk about the TRIP personnel yes, there's the being out and being on the system for, fair enforcement and code of conduct and all of that. But the other side is customer service part of it. Are we going to be doing or requiring or having some sort of customer service training? Because we also want to see that sort of positive side to this role.
Yeah, Chair Barber, thanks for that question, because it was definitely something that we explored when we had an initial conversation with Allied, just to see if this was even in the realm. And I laid out, this is what's in statute, so it's not just fair inspection, it's not just writing tickets, it is all these other things. It is being present, it is being available, it is being a resource. And so they didn't bat an eye. We talked a little bit about what training would look like. They have their own set of internal training that they do. But we also talked about there's things that are specific to Metro Transit, how we want them to conduct themselves. And then how, for instance, reaching those social services, those are things that they're going to need to specifically know. And so how we're going to tie all that together.
Very good, thank you, and glad to hear that, actually, that's very good. I thought I heard that it's mostly going to be on the LRT first, but is there plans for the ADRT system as well?
Yeah, Chair Barber, definitely. Right now, we have been focusing on the LRT system with the CSOs and also with the Transit Service Intervention Project that is legislative mandated to be on the LRT. But we know that there are issues certainly elsewhere in the system, and, the BRT lines are right there. And as a proof of payment system, that's definitely something where we want to be as well. So looking at the LRT lines, but we're also going to be analyzing, like, where do we need folks, right? So where are we hearing from customers, or where are we hearing from employees, or what are we seeing in dispatch calls for service, or those types of things, so we can be smart about where we're putting resources.
Very good. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And just sort of a final comment, I'm very happy to see this and that we're advancing this. Because we have this whole sort of holistic approach of a lot of different ways we're coming after trying to make this a customer-friendly, safe, secure system, and to, like, Councilmember Chambliss's point, that now we have the funding. We've been talking about it, and we've been thinking about it and trying to plan, but for the transportation omnibus, now we can actually really go do this stuff. And it's really exciting to see it starting to come together. And this is one big critical piece that I think we're finishing up the year with. So with that, if there's no other questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2023-302, same week.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Carter. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Morales. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Thank you both. All right, now we are on to our final business item, which is business item 2023-303. Also a same week item, it's Metro Greenland Extension Amendment 4 to its lease agreement. And we have Jim Alexander here.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, council members. So this is relates to the lease for the project office. So we started this lease back in 2012 with Middleton Park Place investors, and that lease is expiring at the end of this year. So we need to extend it. Just for full disclosure, this was actually signed by a regional administrator back in May. It was a mistake that we didn't have the paperwork with the numbers correct, and we caught this, and we realized we need to have council approval before we can go proceed with this. This would be a lease that would start January 1 of next year and take us through the end of 2025. And when we signed this lease back in 2012, we were just a little bit under about $1.80 per square foot per month, and the rate which would be signing on this one is about $2.85. So we consider this as within the realms of inflation from that period. Also, we kind of weighed the just the cost of disruption and the cost of moving the IT equipment, looking for another place. It seemed more equitable to stay at this location. This does house project office staff just within the agency and also outside agency. We have MnDOT and Hennepin County helping us out in this project, as you well know, as well as our consultant staff are occupying the space. So, Madam Chair, I'll present the action here that the Metropolitan Council ratify the Regional Administrator's May 3rd, 2023 execution of Amendment Number 4 to the lease agreement between the Metropolitan Council and Middleton Park Place investors that extends the lease by 24 months beginning January 1, 2024 and ending December 31, 2025 in an amount not to exceed $1.5 million. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing and hearing none, then I entertain a motion to approve business item 2023-303, same week.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cameron. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Morales. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Thank you, Jim. And because all of the items except for the Central Station ones are same week, they will all go non-consent to the council on Wednesday. And I think the Central Station should also probably go non-consent because I think the council will be interested in it, so I would agree. Okay. So far, we're up to 11 business items for the Transportation Committee on Wednesday. So, all right, with that, then we can move into information. So our first is regional transportation forecasting, and we have Dennis Farmer here. Welcome.
Chair Barber, council members. My name is Dennis Farmer, and I'm a planning analyst in Metropolitan Transportation Services. Specifically, I work in the research and the modeling unit. My pronouns are he, him, and I want to thank the chair and the council members for this opportunity to give a brief presentation on transportation planning's modeling efforts. I'm just going to give a broad overview of some of the tools we use to forecast for transportation planning and projects in Metropolitan Transportation Services. Perfect. Okay. Before getting into the hows of forecast modeling, here are some of the whys on why we run these forecast models. A lot of long-range planning projects and studies require some kind of forecast. And as a metropolitan planning organization for the Twin Cities urban area, the Metropolitan Council is responsible for maintaining the regional travel demand model used to forecast for a lot of these projects. And these forecasts help us explore how our systems might change in the future due to several factors. For instance, we might look at how large-scale investments such as new highway facilities or new transitways might affect our transportation systems and how they perform. We also look at how changes in our region, such as a growing population, how more jobs, how more people or households might create new transportation challenges and changes. And we might use these forecasts to see how that new growth might affect our systems. And it's not just an increase in the population, but also changes in the demographic make of that population. How different demographic changes might create different needs, changes in our transportation system. I think Director Charles Carlson mentioned the aging population. So that's one thing we might look at going in the future is how our system, how travel might change due to an aging population or other demographic changes that we might see. We also look at how changes in land use patterns might affect the transportation system and use our forecast model to forecast that. Or we might look at how other policies such as our managed toll lanes might affect travel, as well as technological shifts. So these are some of the things that we're exploring with our forecasts. So related to the why we forecast is the question of what kinds of information we get to use and for planning purposes out of these models. So we can use these forecast models to explore how much use our systems get. For instance, what kind of traffic volumes different segments see at different times of the day, or what transit ridership might look like on certain routes. We might also use a model to explore the kinds of experiences people have on our transportation systems in the future under certain conditions, such as how much congestion they experience, how many things they can get to in a certain period of time, for instance, their accessibility, how long it takes them to get from place to place. And we can also look at the accessibility, not just for the whole region, but we could look at how our transportation system creates different accessibility for different segments of the population, different demographics, or even different geographies, which is an important equity question when we plan. We can look at how it might affect how much people travel, which kind of relates to another thing we can look at, which is what kind of emissions, pollutants, or greenhouse gases we see in the future due to changes in our transportation system or in travel behavior. So that's a lot of the information that we get from the model. So the main model we use in transportation planning is what we call the regional travel demand model. And right now, the council's current travel demand model is called TourCast, and it belongs to a type of model called an activity-based model. What that means is that an activity-based model is basically a model that doesn't assume that people travel just for the sake of making trips. The model starts off by assuming that people travel because they have things that they need to do, or that they need to do, or that they want to do, and that people have a limited amount of resources and a limited amount of time to make those trips. So the model doesn't start off by forecasting trips. It starts off by forecasting the kinds of activities households need to make and how they can accomplish those activities based on the resources that they have as a household, as well as the transportation system that the region offers them. So to do this, the model realizes that in order to get the stuff that they need to get done, people often need to organize the trips that they make into tours to accomplish their daily activities. So this is the graphic up there is kind of an example of a travel day based on tours and trips. And in this example, we have someone who lives at their household. That's that first location. That person needs to go to work, so they might make a trip in the morning to work. While at work, they might need to go have lunch, or they might go to a meeting, so they'll make a trip from their work to their lunch place. And then after they finish their work, it's time to go home. But there's other things that they might need to do. So they're not just making a trip home. They might need to stop and get gas. They might need to stop and go to the grocery store. If they're in a household that has a child that's in daycare or a school that needs to be picked up, and they're the household member because of their schedule where it's most convenient for them to pick up the child at daycare, on the way on that trip home, they'll stop and pick up a kid at daycare, and then they go home. So the main idea is that people aren't just making isolated trips. Rather, they have a series of things that they need to do, and their trips are organized or chained into tours to get these things done so they can kind of do the things they need to do with the schedule, with their schedule in their lives. So that's kind of the framework for the model. So to do this, if you think about one way to think about the model is that it starts off by forecasting sort of the long-term choices that people make, or the long-term factors that affect how people travel, and kind of works its way down in a chain to the daily decisions that people make. So a long-term choice that the model starts off by forecasting is looking at this household and where they live and how many workers they have, like how many autos are they likely to own. And another thing that the long-term choice models look at is, do they have jobs, and where are those jobs located? Do they have kids? Do those kids go to school? Where are schools located? So kind of starting off on the long-term things that guide our lives. And then from there, it forecasts what kinds of activities is this household going to have to do during the day. Are they going to have to make a work trip? Are they going to have to drop somebody off at school? Will they make a shopping trip? And then from there, it looks at things like the scheduling, when they do it. And then it kind of works its way down to more daily things, like what mode do they take? Do they take a car? Do they carpool? Do they bus? Can they bike? And then from there, at the very end, it looks at, given all that, what route do they take? And then, or what bus route do they take? Or what road can they take based on congestion levels at that time? So kind of working from the long to the short term. And so kind of looking at this too, you can see how it's not just the transportation system that affects the forecast of travel, but other demographics. So going back to that example of an aging population or an older population, you can see how that might show up in long-term choices about how many automobiles they own, or whether they're working or they have a place that they need to go every day. So kind of this long-term to short-term also gives us some sensitivity or ability to examine how a variety of changes might affect travel in the future. So since about 2015, we've been using this TourCast model, and it's worked pretty well for us. I'd say it has worked well for us, but we are committed to continually improving how we forecast. So one of the things we're doing is we're working on implementing a newer activity-based model in the region, and right now we're working on a model called Activity Sim. It's another activity-based model, probably one of the things that distinguishes it from TourCast is that the activity sim model is being developed by sort of a consortium or a partnership of other transportation agencies, mainly other metropolitan planning organizations across the region. Some state DOTs or departments of transportation are involved. And this collaboration helps us to ensure that as we develop this model, we're kind of leveraging the expertise and experience of a lot of different agencies. It also ensures that as a group, we are continuously improving how we're modeling. And some of those improvements are, over time, this group has been able to make the model run faster, which is really important if you want to examine a lot of scenarios. Right now, our TourCast model can take up to several days to run. It's very complex. The group has gotten this model, it's have that, and is trying to make it even faster. So another thing that the group has done is created a series of additional models or abilities to help try and capture some of the challenging trends we've seen in trying to plan for the population, which includes things like telecommuting and working from home, and how is that affecting things, or new vehicle types like electric vehicles, or transportation network companies like Uber or Lyft. Even some examinations of how connected and autonomous vehicles might affect travel in the future. So right now, where we are with Activity Sim is we did kind of a quick project last year where we took a very sort of mature, established Activity Sim model. Specifically, we took the Detroit area model, and we got it to run with our own local data and our own local sort of inputs. And the next step is to take that model and to refine it and calibrate it using our travel behavior inventory and our onboard survey so that it better reflects the specifics of our region. So our goal is to have that Activity Sim model up and running for planning projects around the end of 2024. So the last few slides have been about our regional travel demand model, which is kind of the backbone of transportation planning's forecast work. But we use some other models to help us plan in the future. One is a transit model called STOPS, or Simplified Trips on Stop Software. And that provides another way for us to get ridership forecasts, and it offers some advantages in that the STOPS model allows us to really make some very more detailed representations of how the transit network might change, things that we can't necessarily represent in the travel demand model. So it's an alternate source of transit ridership forecasts. Another model we use is the MOOS model, which is a model that was developed by the Environmental Protection Agency, that if you give it some inputs from your regional travel demand model, such as how much people travel in the future, what speeds they travel, it gives us a forecast of transportation-related pollutant emissions and greenhouse gases. So if you've seen us present, or if you've seen forecasts of how greenhouse gas emissions might go up due to a transportation policy plan or an amendment, that's likely coming from our MOOS model. And then finally, our travel forecasts rely on another very important set of forecasts, and those are forecasts of how the regional population and employment might change in the future. Specifically, how many new people and jobs will we get in our region, and where will those people locate, or where will they work? For this, demographers and forecasters in the Council's Community Development Department use a model called Urban Sim. I'm just going to talk about that briefly in the next couple slides. So our socioeconomic forecasts, where people live, where people work, play an important role in the transportation forecasts. If we have more people in the region or more jobs in the region, we can naturally expect that more people will be driving on our roads, using our buses, using our trails. And community development has a model they have called REMI, which is a regional economic model. And what that does is it looks at forecasts of national economic growth. It looks at how our region's economy changes in line with sort of the national economy, and it forecasts how many new people we'll be getting in the region and how many new jobs we'll be getting in the region. So from that, we get the total population and the total number of jobs. And then the next step is to figure out where those people will live and where they will work. Because as we know, as Land use can affect transportation. As people move closer or further from jobs or vice versa, we can expect to see changes in how they travel, what mode they use. So we use a model called UrbanSim to take those regional growth totals and forecast where all those people will live and work in the future. So UrbanSim could be an entirely separate presentation, and I won't get too much into the details, but in short, it considers a variety of things like land use policies, rents, how attractive certain areas might be to certain households or to certain employers, and it allocates future growth to those specific locations based on those factors. And this becomes an important input to the transportation model. So we know land use affects transportation, but we also know that transportation affects land use. How accessible our transportation system is makes different areas more attractive based on how many jobs you can get to, how accessible services are. For employers, it could make an area more attractive because it can mean better access to workers. It can mean better access to households who are customers. So this next slide is kind of a simple representation of this. If you look at that green circle, that's kind of where we start off with the local forecasts of people in a population. And we know that where people live, it'll affect what they do, how they travel. That in turn will affect the system performance, how much congestion we have, whether people can use transit or whether they can bike or walk to work, all those things. But that in turn, that transportation system and the opportunities it offers, in turn, can make a neighborhood more attractive, which in turn, or less attractive, which in turn can affect land use. So one of the things that we've tried to do over the past few years is not just use land use forecasts to forecast transportation, but also to look at how transportation affects our land use forecasts. So one way we've been doing that is taking advantage of the fact that we have this UrbanSim land use model and this transportation model to start off, to have them interact, and to start off by giving the transportation model inputs from the land use model, but also taking measurements of accessibility from the transportation model and also feeding that into the land use model so that we get some kind of interaction from that. Right now, what we've started to do is we've started to take from the transportation model, we've looked at different neighborhoods and we've said, how many jobs can you get to by 20 minutes by car or 45 minutes by transit? And feeding that into the land use model where that also has an influence on where development occurs and where people move, or at least our forecasts of them. So, all right, just a couple more slides here. So of course, there's a lot of uncertainty and challenges in doing this work. One thing that forecasters can do a better job of is being clear with policymakers and stakeholders and other audiences that all of our forecasts are based on different assumptions. So every forecast is really just sort of an if-then statement, right? Forecasts are based on a series of assumptions which are ifs. And we're kind of saying with a forecast that if these things happen, then we think this forecast is a likely outcome. And some of those ifs that we put into these models, they can be very significant and are themselves very uncertain at times. So if you take the previous example of land use, every forecast that we present or that you get in a report or a project study, likely has an accompanying land use forecast. And if that forecast that went into that is different, the forecast might be different. Likely it will be different. It could be a lot different. It could be a little different. It depends, but it will be different. Also, other ifs that we put in our models are ifs about transportation behaviors that we've historically observed being the same. And we've seen that if has changed recently too with the pandemic and with people working from home. Technology is another big if. So, and we're seeing how things like Uber, Lyft, how are changing things, how in the future connected autonomous vehicles might change things. So we acknowledge that there are these ifs out there and that they present a lot of uncertainty, and we're looking at ways in dealing with that. Some way to deal with that is to adopt or adapt our models or evolve our models to handle some of these new factors, and some of our work with ActivitySim is trying to do that. We can also make sure that we periodically validate or check our models against newer data that we get that are reflecting some of these trends. And our recent travel behavior inventory, both the household survey and the onboard survey, provides us an opportunity to check how our models are capturing some of that behavior. We can use multiple tools, find alternate tools. We can also forecast under a range of assumptions to give people information about how things might change. And recently, there's been some work at the council doing some scenario plannings, forecasting under different scenarios. So that's one tool. And then another tool is we can be more transparent about some of the assumptions that we have behind our models. Another big issue that's come up recently is the question of whether or not our model is capturing what's called induced demand, which is basically, in a nutshell, the idea that if we add more capacity, we might encourage people to travel more. That new travel comes from a lot of sources. It could come from people traveling, making more trips, or making longer trips because there's less congestion in the system. It could come from people switching over from carpooling or transit to driving alone. Or it could come from people who used to drive during non-peak periods, shifting over to peak periods now because there's less congestion during the peak period. So, and if you think back at the regional travel demand model and how it goes from that long term to the short term, you can see that there are levers in the model that would allow us to capture some of these things. For instance, if increased capacity is causing more trips, we can see that in the beginning of the model, perhaps where people are making more trips, they're doing more. If it's encouraging land use development further out, maybe we can capture that with the interaction between the travel demand model and the land use model. So theoretically, the levers are there, but we do realize we need to do more testing on this and to make sure that even though the levers are there, that we're showing the kind of the right sensitivity to those things. So one of the things we want to do over the next few months is to do some testing of some scenarios where we add transportation system capacity, see what that does, see if it's reflecting induced demand, and compare that to studies that people have done, compare that to other tools people have created to measure induced demand. So that's sort of on our to-do the next few months. All right. That is my presentation. That was a really brief overview, but I'm here for questions. We've got our senior manager, Jonathan Ehrlich, so we've got deep bullpen if people have questions. And we're also available if people want follow-ups with more details. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's very interesting. Councilmember Chambliss and then Carter.
Yes, very interesting. I'm really happy to see that we have this new tool, the Urban SIM tool, which seems to be a little bit more direct and more short-term and able to take the forecasted information into action maybe sooner, if that's what I'm hearing correctly. What I've been thinking about lately is, looking at where we not just have needs, but where we have gaps in our transportation system and wondering if we can use our tools to help us identify where we have gaps or redundancies in our transit. And secondly, I'm also thinking about, like in the suburbs and like the city where I live, we have apartments that are over 20 years old in our affordable housing apartments. Most of those are over 20 years old, and we're getting some new affordable housing. It is located in a major, transit area, because that's the way we've designed a lot of things. But in order to really thrive in the community, you need to get out of that transit area to other places within the suburbs. And because we don't have as much transportation, it can be very difficult and limiting. So I'm just wondering if we could use the Urban SIM to help us, do some forecasting. Like, let's say we're building a new apartment complex. Are we able to identify where the new apartments are that are affordable? They're going to need bus shelters because they're probably going to have a lot of kids in that apartment building if it's affordable housing. They're not going to want to stand outside if they have small children. So there's just little things and big things that I think application of some of these models in real time can help us solve problems. So I don't know where that fits in, but I definitely like the piece where transportation can influence where people live and work, and at the same time where people live and work influences the transportation system. if we now have two models, the urban sim and the transportation model, I think we're going to be able to influence more where people live and work and get them better services. So I see that this tool is very valuable.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Barber, council members. Yes, I think one possible tool would or usage would be to you look at areas where there could be growth in the future and see what those what the transportation system would look like and what opportunities there are. I think one of the things we need to I think a lot of times when we evaluate transportation forecasts, we use averages, and I think we need to kind of get away from that to start looking at not just averages but specific areas and even areas that aren't part of the average but are maybe at one end that we need to focus on because of low accessibility. So yes, I think definitely.
Thank you.
Councilmember Carter.
I'm hearing the question that I asked and the comments that were just made, but I still have to ask it simply for myself. And, I guess when I look at induced demand and the many ways in which transportation decisions or travel decisions are made, I do think particularly about access, and how people behave today can be impacted by that greater access and the ability to make choices, how the ability to make choices or not impact what we perceive as demand. And I don't know if the answers that you were just sharing or the thoughts that you were just sharing actually answer this question. I'm not sure how they do. The question that I'm trying to get out is, how do we mitigate for the fact that our models always look at how people act and don't look at how people would act?
Yeah.
How do we mitigate for that in terms of understanding the demand that could exist were in fact options available? I'm thinking of, I might as well get it out, I'm thinking of the east side of St. Paul, Battle Creek area, where there's so little option. And how we look at that area and other areas in the suburbs, in the cities, and the outer areas that look a certain way today, but could look very differently if options were there. How do we account for that? How do we factor that into our demand models?
Chair Barber, Councilmember Carter, I think that's a good question. I think one way to do that is to have tools that allow you to examine some of these multiple scenarios. And I think one thing that might include too is, we have very complex tools that take a long time to run and are good at a regional level, but perhaps answering some of these questions would require more nimble tools that maybe aren't as complicated but run faster and can be used to answer some of these scenarios. Because I think the one approach is to find a tool that creates a different transportation scenario in those areas to see how people might behave or react. So I see.
And I'm thinking some of the, the demographics that you do, the examining of what families look like, and, how do you apply more universal kinds of conclusions to those areas would be my question.
Madam Chair and Councilmember Carter, that's really a fabulous question, and it really gets at also some of the things that we struggle with most often in the work that we do. And I think one of there are a lot of answers. Among them is work that we need to do and work that we all need to do, and understanding that the forecasting work and the modeling work and the numbers that we produce are not
perfect.
They're not only that they're not perfect, but they're not like crystal ball projections of what we think is. I mean, they represent what we think is going to happen based on a set of assumptions, but they're not they're not predictions of what the number is going to be. There are, and having both the humility to realize what we don't know and both do further research to investigate the more complicated questions that we continue to answer and the greater complexity that we're interested in, at the same time to have some skepticism about what we're actually capable of doing, what we're capable of knowing, and what's possible and what's not. And so that was one of the quotes in our industry that Dennis provided before, all models are wrong, is very true. And when we present, and we sometimes do present very specific numbers for regulatory reasons or reasons of simplicity. What's the ridership going to be on this rail line in 2042? And that number is, whatever number we present is not going to be what happens. It will be some other number. Hopefully we're close. And if we're not, hopefully we know why. But being able to both on our end to deliver and on the end of policymakers to accept a level of uncertainty and what we do and don't know, and making sure that we're transparent about those assumptions and that we all know what the range of both variability and what we do and don't know about the future really is.
Yeah, and how we go about answering some of our questions, beyond the model, I think is important too. I'm glad for some of the pilots, for example, dial-a-ride kind of things that help us to perhaps try and see what happens within an area and look forward to the opportunity to see them applied in different areas across a region. I didn't expect you to have a scientific answer to that. Thank you.
Okay, additional questions or comments? I just want to say thank you for presenting this information. I think it's important for everyone to see some of the tools that we use. And I think both from our land use and transportation planning, we have some of the best data analysts that you could come up with and researchers that really provide us good, solid tools to work with. And so it's always great to showcase them a little bit. And when they come back with numbers, hopefully have a little more context. So thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. All right, we are on to our final information item, and it's the FTA DBE program semi-annual report. We have Trina Bolton and Ashanti Payne. And we have plenty of time.
Good evening, Chair Barber, Council and committee members, Ashanti Payne, Assistant Director, Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity, and I am joined by Trina Bolton, Senior Small Business Specialist in the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity. And as most know, the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity administers the federal DBE program on behalf of the council as a requirement of a recipient of federal funds from USDOT through FTA, the Federal Transit Administration. There are two other partners in the region that also fit this requirement. That would be the Metropolitan Airports Commission and the Minnesota Department of Transportation. And then the City of Minneapolis is also part of our Unified Certification Program. So we report the results of that program on a semi-annual basis. And as some of you might remember, in 2022, we achieved our highest participation rate of 18%, which set the bar in a way that we definitely had to work together across divisions, across work units to try and meet that again. So I don't want to minimize the effort both of Trina and her team and our partners in Metro Transit in the achievements that we want to report. And a special thank you to Trina, who puts this report together and does have to coordinate within the Metropolitan Council and also coordinating and getting information from our external partners. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Trina, and she's going to tell us about how we did.
Thank you, Shanti. Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members. So this is the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Report. It is administered with federal funds. It is for construction, architectural, and engineering, and professional and technical contracts. The annual goal is set every 3 years, so the current goal is from 2021 to 2023, and it's 14%. The goal for 2024 to 2026 is 13.4%. The project-specific goals are assigned by small business staff, and this report that we're sharing is from April 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2023, and it is reported again semi-annually. Achievement is against the awarded contracts during the reporting period. So this is DBE utilization by award. It's a lot of information. So the top is the June report, the middle is the December report, and then the bottom is the cumulative report. So for this reporting period, 161.6 million was awarded in prime contracts. Close to 773,000 was awarded to DBE primes. 85.3 million was reported and awarded to subcontracts, and then 34.293 million was awarded to DBE subcontracts. So close to 35 million went to DBE firms this reporting period, which is actually amazing compared to the first part of the year. We achieved 21.69%, and it's amazing, like I said. In the beginning, on the June report, we had a shortfall of 6.5%. And then cumulatively for the year, we achieved 20.08%, which is a testament to our small business unit and our partners in procurement and transit throughout the council. So we're really excited about those numbers. The big difference was the spend. About 142 million was awarded this reporting period, more than the previous one. So this is awarded contracts by gender and ethnicity. So about 3 million went to women, Black American women. 579,000 went to Black American men, totaling 3.6 million. Hispanic American women received 1.8 million, and Hispanic American men received about 7.3 million, totaling 9.2 million. And then Native American men received 1.5 million, Asian Pacific Americans 89 or 90,000, and subcontinent Asian Americans 246,000, and then non-minority women received 20 million. This is total awards by ethnicity and location. So minority women received 41 contracts, and then the next groupings was Black Americans and Hispanic Americans each received 8 contracts, and then Asian Americans received 7. These are major contracts that were awarded. So the Blue Line Light Rail Extension Project was about 77 million. The DBE commitment was 19%. The Blue Line Light Rail Extension B was 19.3 million. The DBE commitment was 19.2%. The Metro B-Line construction contract was about 15 million with a 21.4 DBE commitment, and then the Gold Line Wood Lane Station Park and Ride was about 14.6 million with a commitment of 16.4%. Some success stories: 5 different DBE firms were awarded prime contracts. 4 contracts were awarded to Native American firms, totaling 1.5 million, 2 male firms, and 1 with multiple contracts. 8 contracts were awarded to Black American firms with 3.6 million, 4 female firms, 1 with multiple contracts, and then 2 male firms, 1 with multiple contracts. And then 8 contracts were awarded to Hispanic American firms, 2 male firms, and 5 male firms, 1 with multiple contracts. And then this is DBE achievement yearly comparison. So there's the DBE goal from 2019 to 2020 was 15%, and then 2021 to 2023 was 14%. And you can see from 2020, we've really increased our awards to DBE firms, which is exciting to see, and hopefully we can continue that, through 2024 and on. And then this is just a comparison. I think previous meetings, people have asked, what's been the growth? And you can really see in 2023, the awards to Black American female firms with 3 million, Hispanic American female firms with 1.8, and then this year, Hispanic American males, 7.3, and then Native American firms with 1.5. And then this is just a combination of male and female firms combined. And again, you can see the growth in Black American firms and Hispanic and Native American. And there's been a dip in the non-minority females, but it's nice to see the growth in the other ethnic groups. And then Ashanti will talk about some process improvement that we've done.
Yes, so we are continually looking at our initiatives, our processes to see where we can improve, also to see where we have gaps. If you noticed on that, was it slide 8, I believe it was, where in previous reports we had 0 participation from Black and Latino women-owned firms. And that's significantly changed. And that was a result of some of the targeted outreach efforts that we did that specifically targeted that demographic and engaged them in an effort to contract with us here at the council. Can you go back to that? Sure. Yes, meet and greets as well. Definitely a strategy where we try to connect businesses either on an individual basis or group basis with business units. Last week, I was just at a outreach event that was hosted by HNTB, and one of the businesses took, after the panel, took the time to pull me aside and tell me how the council is a leader in this area, and specifically relayed a story in which one of our MCES managers intentionally made sure that her firm was included in the process. And that kind of impact, of course, we talk about our goals and they're important to keep us accountable, but she described to me that, one, she was able to keep an employee that was being sought out by larger businesses, and it gave her the opportunity to hire a young engineer to work on the Gold Line project. So really impactful in terms of the businesses and livelihoods, even beyond just the goal numbers. Mentor Protege, we mentioned that before, where we partner certified small businesses with larger, longer established businesses to work on specific aspects, build capacity to increase their opportunities to contract with us. We've made improvements to the contract initiation memo process and our goal setting process that has also moved us forward in a better way and in a more efficient way. We have a new data team where we are looking at how do we improve our reporting and how do we improve our data and how do we use that data to make better and more informed decisions. And last, I'll just talk about the Thrive Equity Funds, and we have executed a master contract to provide supportive services, technical assistance, access to resources to DB and MCUB businesses, again, to position them to better participate in our contracting efforts.
Questions?
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you for the presentation and congratulations on the progress that you've made. And the push to continue to do more. So I'm looking at the awarded contracts, December 2023, page 3. Do you know if some of these contractors receive development funds from Metropolitan Council or any other, well, yeah, specifically Met Council? I'm just curious if that's helping incentivize more developers to come forward or more contracts to come forward. Are any of these, well, you did say some of them are development related, like on the Green Line, but.
Chair Barber, Councilmember Chambliss, if I'm understanding your question correctly, when you say developer
Like
funds.
LCA funds or some of our livable community grants or the cleanup grants.
Thank you. I honestly don't know the answer to that, but we can find out and get that answer for you.
Okay, just a curiosity. And then the other question that I have is from page 6. It was really nice to hear the success stories and have that information broken down and even have high-level dollar amounts attached to them. I might have missed this, but was there a specific time frame for when these contracts were awarded? Was this 2023, 22, or over?
This reporting period was from April 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2023.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sure you're doing some analysis on page 8 where there were, some significant gains, with the exception of some of the numbers went down in 2023 for Asian Pacific. That went down quite a bit. So I'm wondering if you've saturated some of the capability that we're ready to move forward, and we just need more folks in the pipeline, or what the reasons are behind that. I don't need the answer today, but I was just curious about that. And then the same thing about okay, I'm looking at, yeah, I was looking at the non-minority, but that's non-minority female, so that explains that. Okay.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Madam Chair, Ashanti, the Latino population, Hispanic dollars went up considerably. And is that like with one contract? It's almost the other side of the coin that you were talking about, is that one big contract could be there, but then if it's gone 2 years from now, it looks like there was this big drop, or there was this happening here. Do you see that happening with that one? Well, maybe you could explain how that jumped up so high.
Yes, so there was 8 separate contracts and I think 6 different businesses. So there was one Latina owned firm that got multiple contracts, and also one Latino firm that got multiple contracts. So that's one of the things we definitely look at in terms of, is it sustainable? So yes, is it? And sometimes we do see that in terms of, is this one contract on, let's say, the Green Line that really pushed this demographic to a level that we may not have seen in the past. When I looked at it, I didn't see that in this case. There is multiple businesses being involved and engaged, and based on the type of work involved, that type of work is going to continue, and those opportunities are going to continue.
Councilmember Carter, then I'll come back.
It is so very helpful to see the information that reflects the work you all have been doing. And again, congratulations on the achievements. Time tells all. And so the sustainability question is certainly one that I think we all want to invest in. As you report the information year to year, it's good to see the ups, and sometimes we're going to see the downs as well. And I'm wondering if you have a perspective on a rolling report that shows us every 3 years, or that average of business rolling forward with these different demographics. It's really good to see the breakout, because quite often we don't. We see everything lumped into one, and you really can't tell based on the availability and the business that we're doing whether we're continuing to see we are continuing to see disproportionality, but whether we're biting into that at all and moving forward. So I'm really interested in acknowledging the information you're providing to us now, but also asking for that deeper dive that helps us, as you are reporting in the future, to answer the questions about ongoing connection to work in these populations. Do you foresee showing us that rolling kind of average and keeping us on track in future years with respect to what prayerfully will be the growth in the business we're doing with these communities?
Chair Barber, Councilmember Carter, that's an excellent question. We did, I don't know that we specifically presented on that to the council or to this committee, but I think that's one of the benefits of us for the first time going outside to have our triennial goal methodology and availability analysis done by a third party. And I'll just say, when I've worked with the University of Minnesota and Dr. Myers in the past, I always learn something new. And if you have the opportunity to see his presentation or second presentation to the Equity Advisory Committee, we did get into that conversation a little bit and seeing where some of the disparities, and really where the disparities lie is in the prime contracts, which that's why the number of prime contracts is such a key indicator for us in terms of growth and the opportunities. That ability for businesses to directly contract with us versus having to depend on a prime contractor to provide them with that opportunity. So yes, in that data, it's lengthy data, and perhaps maybe we'll have the opportunity to come back and specifically talk about some of the things that were in that that report that give us an idea and an indication, because that looks at a 3-year projection,
Right.
And also looking back 3 years as well in terms of what has happened.
To see that on a regular basis would be very helpful. I'll dig it out with you. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Thanks. So the success story just kind of makes me, looking at this is really good information, but I'm also wondering other ways to measure success that might not be evident at Met Council, because if they're able to scale up for a prime contract for Met Council, that means they can get other contracts in the future. We're not probably going to track that, but it does mean success. So maybe even knowing maybe in the future how these companies are growing over time could be helpful, because if we can see that they have scaled up, that is success, even if they don't get a contract with us. If we can do that in a way that, doesn't take time on things beyond the Met Council, I think that would be very helpful. And it could also encourage other DBE contractors to get on board when they see that, the support mechanisms are there. This can be done. You can start with a subcontract and move to a prime contract potentially, or even where there are, like if we have mechanical, electrical engineers that haven't worked on buses or trains, and there's a training program or an opportunity to transfer those skills to one of our contracts. First of all, how do they know that they can do that? And is that a factor of our success? Just some thoughts.
Chair Barber, Councilmember Chambliss, I think that has to be a factor of our success if we're going to continue to move the needle and move the bar. What I can say is that, some years ago when I was at another agency, we collected some of that data for a baseline to say, ask questions like how many employees do you have? What's the largest contract you worked on? To create that baseline data. I would be very interested in going back now to see how MnDOT has built on that data or supplement that and gone back to take the look, because like you said, if we don't track that and if we don't make that as a part of our plan, then we're gonna plateau at some point.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Sure. Working with the Latino Chamber of Commerce, I'm now trying to form more relations with the Black Chamber of Commerce, the Hmong Chamber, and all to kind of organize what we can do together as far as looking at system changes. Because we get more information from people who have not been successful at getting grants and then come back and say, but I couldn't fill it out. I don't have a back of the house. I'm just doing the work. And so they just never get kind of that next level. Is there, and so I love the data that you're having, because I think we can sit down and work that. Do you get much from the chambers? I know you don't get much from me right now. And so until I got here, I really didn't, we work with people who make noise is what was happening versus looking to go forward, unfortunately. And so now I think I'm making a more effort. But do you get much from the other chambers and the other ethnic chambers in particular?
Chair Barber, Councilmember Pacheco, our engagement and development unit did start some conversations and engagement with the chambers. I cannot sit here and tell you if that engagement was or how effective it was, what we got out of it or what we learned from it. But I can certainly come back with that information and check in with that unit and see where they are, if they've halted, is it continuing, those sorts of questions. I can definitely find that out.
All right, this will be very helpful.
All right, any additional questions? Councilmember Morales?
Thank you. One of the numbers I would be really interested in looking at is the mentor protege program, seeing how many mentors and how many mentees and what the utilization rates are for mentors and mentees when it comes to contracts and stuff like that, to see if it's a beneficial program to, use it a lot more and look at more mentors, more mentees to help them build it up and get to that prime contract and get them into larger and better things.
Chair Barber, Councilmember Morales. It's interesting because we just got a data request about the mentor protege program. So I kind of have those numbers kind of fresh in my mind. But what I will say is we definitely have more mentees than we do mentors. And then there are times where we've had situations where there were several mentors wanted this one star mentee, small business. So, but on the whole, we have more mentees than mentors. So we do try to leverage and partner. No, I shouldn't say we try. We do leverage and partner with our partner agencies, MnDOT, Department of Administration, MAC, City of Minneapolis, in operating that mentor protege program. We host an event annually where we are recruiting and promoting the program, the benefits. And it happens usually early in the year. Actually, earlier this year, I got the opportunity to address the folks there. We had it over at North Side. I forget the name of the building. Across from the Urban League, where the McDonald's used to be. Anyways, that building, you know the building. So yes, we host events like that to attract more and to try to spur that, because we have seen some good success from that. And the stories that come out of that are good stories to tell.
All right, anything additional? Well, then I'm going to close with just amazing work, really. I look at the individualized supports and things that you're doing with these businesses, and to see, like you said, people moving from subs to primes. That's a huge deal. And clearly, it impacted the numbers dramatically when you look at the first part of the year to what we're seeing right now. So thank you for having us wind up our year on a very, very positive note. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, before you all disperse, we've got a couple of announcements. So this is our last meeting this year at Haywood. We are moving back over to Roberts Street in St. Paul in January. So please do not forget. We will send out reminders. I will guarantee somebody will forget, but that's okay. We're still going with it. We'll send you an extra reminder, council member. And also with that, Becky is getting a break from being recording secretary for Transportation Committee, but I want to thank you so much for all the work you do here. And I'm going to insist on a round of applause for Becky because she makes it. And then I actually do want to thank all of you guys. Just tonight is a good example. We have a lot of really good, thoughtful conversation in this committee. We have a ton of work that we push through here, but we still take the time to have good discussions, and I appreciate it all. So thank you all, and because we're done here, happy holidays, and we can be adjourned.
Thank you.